All right, what's up, YouTube? Today I'm going to be talking about how to become fluent in Latin in the 21st century. This guide is based off of my personal experiences. Um, I went to college, I studied Latin for a couple semesters, and I was a classics major. I also tutored Latin and Greek to students. And so this guide is a collection of my personal experiences, what I wish I knew when starting out, what I've kind of learned along the way and really what I've found, what works for me, and the people that I've tutored. So let's just jump into it. First thing I would recommend is the book Lingua Latina. This is going to be the core series that we're working with. Part one is this orange and white book on the left there. And then these two books on the right side, the blue and the green books, are meant to be read in tandem with the white and orange book. I would definitely recommend at least the Green and Red book because it's a collection of Greek and Roman mythology, which is always super interesting, right? If you're studying Latin, you got to know some mythology, right? However, it is in the later chapters, so you're gonna have to read to learn about it, right? It makes it exciting. So that's step one. Get this part one Familia Romana. And just an example, forgot to mention because Lingua Latina is probably not just the best textbook for Latin, but probably for any language, to be honest. This book is based off the concept of comprehensible input, which means that you're reading stuff that you can comprehend, but you are still learning at the same time. For example, the first sentence is Roma in Italia est. And based off of, kind of your own knowledge of language and geography and maps and images and stuff, you can figure out what that means. Not what it translates to, but what it means, right? We'll talk about that a little later. But this book is basically a story of a Roman family, um, and it's pretty funny. Sometimes it's pretty interesting. It talks about pretty much every concept under the sun, from I don't know, agriculture to astronomy to books to gardens and whatever, just a bunch of random stuff, right? But practical stuff that you'll probably come across later in your readings. And what I really like about it is it has these notes um, and these images that go really well along with it. Makes it for a super interesting read. So that's an example of a page from this book. Now, after you read that, I would recommend Ad Alpes, A Tale of Roman Life, which is a pretty good sequel, excuse me, for someone at a beginner intermediate stage, which is kind of what you would end up being once you finish Familia Romana. It's a collection of stories in Latin. Um, the notes are a little less interesting. They're more footnotes and English translations, so that's not great. But sometimes, they do have a picture with a word under it, so that's something, right? But it's a really good bridge, definitely, for our next part, which is Lingua Latina again. There's a second part to Lingua Latina, this green and white book. But before that, you could read one of these three books, or two of them, or three of them, or none of them, I guess. Although I definitely recommend reading at least one. If you're looking for a broad survey of Roman and Latin literature, I would recommend Sermones Romani. That's a really good just collection of different famous Roman authors and stuff. The second one, De Bello Gallico, by Julius Caesar, is a pretty famous story about war. So if you like war and soldiers and a little bit of history, you can read that. Or you can read the Amphit- Am- Amfitrio Commedia, um, which is about plays, and this one comedy, which is, if you're into plays, you can definitely read that. It also tells about theater in general in ancient Rome. So yeah, Read one of these, whatever sounds interesting, and then you can jump into Roma Eterna. It's set up similarly to the first book, so you should be used to it by now. And as you're reading along, there are other books you can read in tandem. Like in the first book, you could read these two in tandem. It's the same with the second book, but there are a lot more options now because we have a lot more vocabulary, a lot more grammar, a lot more knowledge of the language. So we're opening our mind to a lot more possibilities, right? Like, for example, by chapter 40, you have the opportunity to attempt to read the Aeneid by Virgil, the famous poem. Or you can read The Art of Love by Ovid. Sounds pretty interesting. No, but yeah, you're basically reading real Latin by now. Um, and the notes are, still diagrams and images, but maybe a little less. So now you're just reading just the pure, not the pure, but the the Latin, right? I'll also give a shout out to Carla Hertz's The Lover's Curse, which is a tiered reading of Aeneid form. I thought it was really good. Lots of good images, and it's basically what I talked about, that comprehensible input. Um, Starting out, basically not knowing a lot, and then by the end, you're reading the actual Aeneid. So that's definitely a good book to read too. And at this point, you can read what you want, man. You pretty much have a good foundation at this point. If you want a dictionary, I'd recommend Castle's Latin Dictionary, Latin to English and English to Latin, just for those words that you come across that you never saw before and you don't have any help to figure it out, right? Another, I'll talk about some other sources. First up is Perseus. This is a collection of basically every Greek and Roman piece of literature under the sun. It's digital, but if you want physical copies, you can get these Loeb classics, which are pretty interesting because on one side you have the Latin, and on the other side you have the English. The Latin is the red books, the Greek is the green books, by the way. They're a little on the smaller side. Personally, I wish they were a little bigger, but yeah. And then we have these Dickinson commentaries, pretty good. And then you have Latin Wikipedia if you want to read that. So yeah, some sources. Yeah. And lastly, just some advice for studying, which would really supercharge this guide. Number one, I would use Anki for flashcards for vocabulary that just doesn't stick in your head quite right, right? Because people remember different things. Some things stick out more than others. So I would recommend just putting one word on one side and then like an image on the other side of the word. Anki is really good. It's free. It can be as complicated as you want. It can be as simple as you want. That's what I really like about it. Number two, I would reread chapters and texts. And this is interesting because if you read, for example, chapter one on day one, and then on day two, if you read chapter one again, and then chapter two, you're going to interestingly have a stronger foundation. Not because you've read it again, but because, you understand the language a little better. Just a little bit. But it's sort of that repetition. Okay. So reread chapters in text. You can do like a pyramid, right? Read chapter one, day one, day two, chapters one and two, day three, chapters one, two, and three. You can do that. Or you can do, just chapters two and three on day three or something. So reread. Number three, don't try to translate. Um, what I mean is, as you read, do not try to translate into your native language. Try to read the words for what they mean, like in reality, in the abstract, right? And not just try to transverbalize in your head, I guess. This is something that I struggle with. It's hard to not do immediately, but this is what the difference will be for fluent readers, to be honest. Number four, read stuff you enjoy and you want to read. If you want to read the plays, read the plays. If you don't want to read history, don't read history. It's simple as that. Um, life's too short for stuff you don't care about if you can't help it, right? So this will help with motivation, and it'll, make sure you still enjoy it, right? I mean, isn't that the point, kind of? It is for me, at least. I'm not making money, so anyway. Number five, try copywriting. Copywriting is basically copying Latin into sorry, not English, but copying Latin. Oh, sorry, no, it's not. It's not copying Latin into another language. It's just copying Latin, for example, from a book into your journal or something. Maybe it's a paragraph. You copy it and you paste it, right? I mean, with a pen or a pencil, or you can type it out. But pen and pencil, there's some really good research that shows pen and pencil is far and away the best for retention and learning. So just copy with a pencil or something, a paragraph or a page or a chapter. And last but not least, you got to stay consistent. A language is kind of like a muscle. If you don't use it, you lose it. So stay consistent, do a little bit every day, set goals for yourself that are doable but somewhat ambitious. So, yeah, those tips I would recommend for studying, for learning. And this guide overall, if you follow it, you know, um, you should be fluent or pretty close to fluency in reading Latin. If you want to learn how to speak, that's a little different. Um, but yeah, so I hope you have enjoyed this guide. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. Yeah, take care.